My name is Jessica O'Kane. I have 2 children in the Anne Arundel County school system. I'm an attorney and a licensed real estate broker. For the record, I am not against cell towers and telecommunications. I used to work in the field. However, I am for responsible placement of such facilities. I am against them being placed at public schools. Under the master lease agreement that was signed initially in June of 2012 and then re-signed in June of 2017, every public school in Anne Arundel County can have up to 3 cell towers with 5 carriers on each pole at each school system. Pardon, each school. My opposition to them is based on diminished property values, which can be up to 20%, the negative aesthetics of them, and ill health effects. Dr. Joshua Booth, a professor of computer science at Franklin and Marshall College, who has worked with EMF radiation, calculates that a 100-foot proposed cell tower would provide the equivalent power of 1.4 live wireless routers strapped to the head of a child for 7 full school years. Because children are smaller and still developing, they are more vulnerable to radiation than adults. This person quotes, "I can't imagine a parent or board member who would strap a wireless router to a child's head for years." I don't understand why a private company should benefit for the use of our public school land. Why not a gas station, dry cleaner, nail salon, or Chick-fil-A? I would have no problem giving up some of our school property so that I can get some of my errands done before going to work. It is disgraceful that the Anne Arundel County conducted, I'm speaking in particular about Shady Side Elementary. It is disgraceful that Anne Arundel County conducted the public information meeting this summer. And I know it was done on purpose because families are away. So not a lot of people can come to those meetings. And then at the last minute, it was scheduled for July. It was rescheduled for August at the last minute. So anyone who was attending in July and then had vacations in August couldn't attend. But Shady Side did turn out, and Shady Side, which you should have already gotten a report on or will be getting a report. Is that my warning for like a minute? Like in court, it goes 30 seconds? Okay. They came out and they voiced their opposition very loudly, and I hope that this board takes that into consideration and everything else other people are saying with respect to this matter. Thank you very much for your time and consideration and for all the hard work you do all year round. I know what it's like because I volunteer on several boards myself. Thank you.
Your position as a board member requires leadership and management.
Could you give your name, please?
Shady Side. And you have a mission of education and safety of students. Your fiduciary responsibility is to the students, in this case, children, parents, and citizens. Placing cell towers at elementary schools is wandering from this mission. It has nothing to do with education, and it's contrary to safety. Good leadership and management by Prince George's and Montgomery counties have made the decision not to place cell towers at elementary schools. Small children are more susceptible to this high-frequency radiation. The school board administrative representative at the Shady Side public hearing made the statement several times that there is no credible evidence that high-frequency radio wave energy from cell towers is harmful. Not only is this not true, but it's a position that proclaims ignorance. There is scientific debate on both sides, and to call this settled science is to put your head in the sand. But it's understandable. It's understandable that the position and the mantra by the school board is understandable because once you admit that the science is debatable, you can no longer, with good management practices, place children in possible harm's way. There is no dispute children are more susceptible to this type of energy. When you admit to yourself that the science is debatable, your good management practices dictate that you must err on the side of safety for the children, as that is your responsibility. At the public meeting, one of the few items Milestone's President Len Forkish shared with the citizens of Shady Side is that he has a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders and investors. He shared this with Shady Side. Your responsibility lies with the students, parents, and citizens, not Milestone. There was a time tobacco was proclaimed to be safe. Ronald Reagan promoted the Camel brand. Baby powder, considered safe, now facing $1.5 billion multiple judgments. It's unfortunate you have renewed a 5-year lease with Milestone without adequate public notice, public input, legal review, and negotiation. Our lawyers read the agreement to hold Milestone harmless on injuries such as radiated high-frequency energy. The insurance clauses do not cover this, and the following paragraph leaves Anne Arundel citizens liable for possible large settlements. Milestone's business practices have been called into question by other jurisdictions, and I would submit that they have made large contributions to our elected officials, our deciders. Our councilman in this district, our district, Jerry Walker, has taken next to the largest Milestone bounty with $5,500.
You now have a hard copy of the email I sent to each of you. I ask that you please give it consideration before you vote. I did research myself, starting with the agencies quoted at the meeting, specifically the American Cancer Society and the FCC. On those agencies' websites, buried in assurances that radiation from towers is safe, are the following statements. From the American Cancer Society website, very few human studies have focused specifically on cellular phone towers and cancer risk. From the Federal Communications Commission website, it is generally agreed that further research is needed to determine the generality of such effects and their possible relevance, if any, to human health. These two statements bring up the concern that these agencies that have been tasked with assuring the public of the safety of cell towers are themselves aware that their own research is, at best, incomplete. We should not risk lives on incomplete research or partial truths. I came here today to try to help you understand that there are recent studies proving that such a tower poses a very grave health risk. Children are biologically more susceptible to corruption by this type of radiation. Esteemed medical professionals, scientists, and biophysicists around the world have studied this, and their conclusion is that it is not safe. Hundreds of studies show that it is hazardous to human health. No less than 15 countries have set their exposure limits hundreds to thousands of times less than the current U.S. standards, and most have banned towers on school property. Many high-level agencies have recently expressed concerns about the inadequacies of the FCC's current standards on cell tower radiation. The EPA, the California Medical Association, the International Journal of Cancer Prevention, and many others all now agree that standards are based only on thermal effects, but important non-thermal effects are also taking place. Their position is that the radiation causes cells to change in a way that makes them cancer-forming. To claim there is no adverse effect from phone towers flies in the face of a large body of evidence. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 essentially removed the value of life and well-being of the residents of an affected community in favor of money and profit. We are unable to protest the installation of a tower based on the latest medical evidence. Current scientific research, free from the pull of the communications lobby, is proving how wrong this action is. We are left with only one avenue to argue against the installation of a cell tower. Under the Telecommunications Act, human lives are things to be discarded and forsaken, but evidently property values are not. Few fully informed persons would purchase a home in an area with such deadly risks. Research in this area is expanding, and more people will come to understand through hard science that cell towers do pose a serious threat. If the cell tower goes up, our property values will go down. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I beg you to consider our lives, and I beg you to vote considering our property values. Thank you.
My name is Diane Cubey. I'm a resident of Shady Side, and I'm also a mother and a grandmother. I'm not going to read you a speech. I'm coming to you on another side, and that's the professional side. I've spent over 30 years in the healthcare industry. The majority of them have been in oncology. I started out in local community centers and worked my way up to run and be the head chief administrative officer of a national cancer organization that represented the community centers across this country. Basically, 81% of all physicians, administrators, and nurses that treat the patients in this country. That position took me to Capitol Hill. I spent 5 years on Capitol Hill working on the Medicare Modernization Act. I was part of the committee that rewrote the laws for Medicare patients to receive their oncology care. From that position, I was one of 5 people, 5 Americans, that accompanied Paula Dobianski, the Undersecretary of State in charge of Eastern European Affairs, and Congressman Lincoln Diaz-Balart. We were a congressional delegation that were sent on the 20th anniversary of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant accident. We represented our country to go over and ascertain the health care concerns and needs of the people of Ukraine. I was asked to come back a second time by the First Lady of Ukraine and the President to sit on a panel of experts from across Western and Eastern Europe to see what concerns and long-term effects that the radiation exposure had across Europe. That meeting, the indications that everything to do with radiation exposure, no matter what the size, is cumulative. They're looking at up to 150 years of effects. And it's not just cancer. It's cardiac disease, it's learning disabilities, and it's genetic mutations that have come out of all of these accidents. The children in Shadyside Elementary School will be sitting in that classrooms for 7 to 10 hours per day, depending on their activities, if they're in aftercare, and so is the staff. I beg you, as a board, to sit there and think of what's going to happen to those people. And you probably won't even be on this board when the real effects occur. But I will tell you, as a professional, local, state, national, and international, this is nothing to play with. Remember, the key word is cumulative. And we ask that you do not allow this to happen. Thank you.
I am opposing the cell tower at Shadyside Elementary School.
Please give your name.
Oh, I apologize. My name is Randy Williams. I'm a registered nurse in Anne Arundel County. I graduated from Southern High School in 1979. I attended Shadyside Elementary School in 1971 when it first opened. And my daughter attended Shadyside Elementary School and is in Southern High School in 10th grade at this time. So I've lived in Shadyside since 1970. I have a vested interest in the property. Excuse me, I get nervous. Let's see. One second. All right. When I first moved to Shadyside and attended the school, we had the same footprint of playground, which is rather small. In the time that I was there, we had a ball field in the back where I could play on my softball team. That's no longer there. The footprint has changed a little. The trees have grown. We're on an area that used to be called the swamp. It is still the swamp. And the trees that are on the property of Shadyside are protecting our property from being a massive swamp on the school playground. There just isn't enough room. It's a very small playground. And thinking about putting in a cell tower, taking out trees to do that on our small community playground is going to cause less time on the playground for the children, because when it rains, they can't go in the grass. They have to play on little tiny area footprint around the school. We don't want more surface that's covered in cement. That's not good for our environment either, because we live on a swamp. So less playground means less space for the kids. My parents moved us to Shadyside in the 70s because we lived in Montgomery County, which was sprawling with suburban life, and it was out of control at that time. Now, Montgomery County has banned cell towers at schools, so maybe that will be a safer place for an elementary school to be. Let's see where else I am here. Let's see. let's see, according to an article in September 23rd, 2001, my mom's a hoarder. I've got a lot of articles saved. I found a community poll that found 92% of the residents in Shadyside say the quality of life is excellent. We have survived years of storms and tropical storms and a few hurricanes when I was there when I was a young girl. And we have neighbors with pickup trucks, and we have neighbors with chainsaws, and they can cut the trees down, and we can handle our own emergencies, and usually we do a good job of it. In conclusion, I would just like to say I'm also a registered nurse in the recovery room, and a lot of my patients have been brain surgery cancer patients who I see in the first days to weeks of their diagnosis. And they ask me, why me? What happened? And we don't know. We can't tell them because we don't know what causes those brain tumors. In conclusion, I'm also a member of a group I don't want anybody to have to be a member of. It's called the Bereaved Parents of America. I've lost twin sons, not to cell exposure, not to cancer, but they are in heaven. And our group of parents have parents who have lost children from every cause and parents of every age. And to be responsible as a board member, to know that in 5, 10, 15, and 20 years, you might be affecting the lives of those children and those parents who forever will be grieving a child. So please consider this when you decide to oppose the cell towers at Shadyside Elementary School and at all elementary schools. And why don't we just get them off of school properties, period. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hi, I'm John Earl. I'm a father of 6 beautiful young children in Shadyside, Maryland. All right, so I'm also an engineer and love technology. In fact, technology allows me to do what I do. It's very important. But when my sister was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer, I started to dig deep into the research that's current on the dangers of microwave radiation. And I'm telling you, after years of research, the risks are real. They're real. I've been looking into this for years. I'm not sure how deeply you've personally looked into this topic. I get 3 minutes to talk, where I believe industry meets with you at the schools, and they get a chance to really explain to you their position on safety, which is based on 20-year-old studies. I think that being educated by industry to make your decision is a conflict of interest, and I would love for you to set up a meeting with independent experts who are, can tell you what is going on with the latest research. I think that would be a good idea before you make your decision. So I really think you need to look at this as an opportunity for you guys to be on the right side of history. The opportunity, to stop the very first cell phone tower at an elementary school in our county. And regardless of your personal beliefs, you cannot ignore 2 facts. 1, Shadyside community has been very clear that they do not want this tower. There's been pushback. And 2, there is mounting evidence that elementary schools are absolutely the wrong place to place a cell phone tower. American Cancer Society, American Pediatric Association, they both say clearly, officially, that long-term research hasn't been done on the effects of on children. So why would we even think of putting a cell phone tower on an elementary school? I don't think anyone wants their children to be part of the long-term studies that have yet to be conducted, right? As far as money goes, we're talking about lives here. It's not a frivolous matter. And you have an opportunity to protect these kids, an obligation, really, to protect these kids. And the dollar amount on a life, we're talking about $15 of revenue for the school system per child at Shadyside Elementary School. It's not going to get more teachers. It's not going to do all the things that the people that want the tower think is going to happen. I just want to say that you're gambling with lives, and the truth is you don't know enough to say it's safe. In fact, nobody has come out yet to say cell towers are safe. And this is your moment to look within and simply do what's right. You vote no on this tower, people are going to respect you for being responsible and not gambling with people's lives. PG County, Montgomery County school boards, they've already taken the opportunity to say no about cell towers at elementary schools. You should talk to them. You should do the same thing. It's a no-brainer. Thank you.
And I just want to say I really don't want a cell tower to go up on my school. I don't think it's a very smart thing to do. And I just hope that you will vote no. Thank you.
And I just don't want to get sick, and I don't want the kids in the school to get sick. Thank you.
But I have grandchildren and children in Shadyside. I was a teacher for 40 years, so my concern was for the safety of the children in Shadyside. Actually, I was astounded that you would consider putting up a cell tower in a place where the smallest people, the most vulnerable people are, and that they will be exposed to radiation on their playground. Not only are they the tiniest people, but they also have the probability for the most cumulative effects of the radiation, as they have the most years of exposure ahead of them. To me, it seems like it's the worst place that you could put something that will possibly cause disease 10 or 20 years down the road due to the cumulative effects of radiation exposure. This kind of reminds me of the warnings heard in the 40s and the 50s, which I remember concerning the danger of cigarette smoking. For many years, the industry claimed that cigarettes were safe. And look how long it took for that fight, with many unnecessary deaths along the way. Is this going to be the same thing with even worse results in the years ahead? I strongly urge that we should be cautious and not go ahead with putting up a cell tower on an elementary school with the possible, and many think the probable, harm to the most vulnerable people. Thank you.
I don't have any children. I don't have any children in any elementary school or ever have. But I do pay property tax. And I've done the calculation just rough back at the envelope, and the portion of my property tax every year that goes to support the school system is about $8,000 a year. That's what you guys get of my money to spend, and I depend on you to spend that money. I'm not complaining. I think it's a really, really important thing that we do collectively, is to contribute funds for the education of our children. Not the sickness of our children, the education of our children. So I calculated over the 17 years that I've lived in the Shadyside area, about $130,000 of my tax dollars have gone into the school system. Now, let's look at that relative to what Milestone's giving you. And I almost had the thought is, you know, man, I'd really be a lot better off if I just took my money and paid it into Jerry Walker and had him vote my way. So it's really not a fair fight. I'm happy to give you my money. I'm happy to educate the children. I spent my years in corporate America, very similar to Diane, and I was responsible for all the high-performance computing business for Hewlett-Packard. And so I negotiated joint engineering agreements between universities, other governments, a lot of the Department of Energy and National Science Foundation labs. And I can tell you, by living through all that, doing a contract when it comes to technology is really sophisticated. And I had legions of smart lawyers and engineers working on my staff to make sure we got that contract right, we got it safe, and we got it profitable for my company, because that was my job. I'm now a farmer. In my retirement, I decided it was really important to grow healthy food, and these children that you saw speak are my customers, and they come to me on their bicycles to buy my organic food for their families. And I think that we all need to think that the health of these children, we're doing everything we can as a community and a village, so to speak, in Shadyside, to help our young people grow up with good values and healthy living. And I really wish that you would give us a chance to continue to do that and to decline this cell tower. And the important thing about this cell tower, because a lot of the people have spoken that they don't have good cell service, we understand that. You got lots of, our phones are ringing off the wall by people who own property that would be willing to host that cell service tower. And the elementary school is certainly not the only location in that area that could do it. So you don't have to make that decision based on that. There's lots of other options. It might cost Milestone a little bit more money, but that's not our problem. Thank you.
Daughters go to Shadyside Elementary School. I'm the father of 3, so it's kind of the reason why I'm here. The cell tower, it's, you know, I don't want to have my kids in a school where they're going to have radiation raining on top of them all day long while they're there. It's supposed to be learning, mind developing. One of my daughters has epilepsy, so she already has a brain condition, and you know, further agitation in her brain is not really going to help her. You know, from all the community and our community meeting and stuff, I'm sure it's pretty obvious to everyone that Shadyside does not want this tower. None of our residents do. No one I've spoken to does. And people that claim that they have poor cell service, maybe you should look at your carrier, because mine works just fine on the school. Now, as far as our kids using cell phones and stuff in the school, I don't see where where there is ever a place for that in schools. Our children should be learning, not on devices to do the learning. With all that said, a point that was made at the community meeting, which you all may be aware of, maybe not, I don't know, the president of Milestone Communications' own child had a form of cancer when he went to a school that was right next to a cell tower. Right next to a cell tower. You know, that kind of information, you know, what do we do with it? You know, I would suspect as a board members that, you know, the person trying to put a cell tower in our schools, you know, what are we supposed to do with that kind of information? I guess I leave that up to you all to decide. You know, I really pray that this doesn't happen. I really do pray for my children. It's not for me. It's for my children. You know, you all as board members have the opportunity to be their heroes right now, to stop this from happening before it ever, you know, before anything does happen. You know, maybe we should play on the points we made already. The other counties that have banned this from their districts, the other countries, for that matter, that have banned this from happening in their countries. They didn't do it for no reason. You know, if you know, they could have made profit off it, just like, you know, Anne Arundel County is going to make profit off it. Why wouldn't they do it? Because there's a risk involved. And, you know, I just don't think that's right for our children. It's not about us. It's about our children and about them learning and developing in schools. And, you know, the final thing I kind of have to say is, you know, please don't poison my babies. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
My family actually just moved to Shadyside back in March, and we were, a big part of what convinced us to plunk down more money than we ever imagined we would on a house was all of the really good things that we heard about Shadyside Elementary. So, and here we are not 5 months later worrying about whether or not the school board is about to approve a potentially carcinogenic cell phone tower at the behest of some corporation trying to make a buck. I mean, this is just mind-boggling to me. I was at the community meeting in Shadyside a few weeks back with over 100 of my neighbors, which if any of you have experience with community meetings, you know that 100 people don't show up to a community meeting in the middle of August unless it's something real serious that people are really concerned about. And I went to this meeting to find out more about the exact proposal on the table, and I left the meeting completely horrified by what I saw and heard. Basically, the rep from Milestone came over and said, you know, when we asked him, do cell phone towers cause cancer? He's like, well, we don't think they cause cancer, but the school board's going to make $25,000 off of this, and you guys are going to get a fraction of that. That's like $5 a year extra for your son's education. Totally worth it. Which, I'm sure many of you have children. Imagine if some salesman was trying to con your school board into making a decision that could potentially jeopardize the life or health of your children. I mean, wouldn't you be livid? This is just, I just don't even have words for it. You've got a $1.2 billion budget that you've got to work with. Clearly, you're not so hard up for money that $25,000 is really going to make or break it. And if it were, I'm pretty sure that most of the parents at Shady Side Elementary would be willing to pay an extra $5 a year in taxes to up the school board budget or whatever to be able to sleep well at night, not having to worry about whether or not their kids are going to get cancer from a cell phone tower. You know, cigarettes didn't cause cancer either until they did. And asbestos didn't cause cancer until it did. So, you know, I don't want to have to worry about if a cell phone tower is something that is going to fall into that category or not. And I feel like as a taxpayer, I shouldn't have to be worrying about that. That's just ridiculous. There are plenty of other parcels in the Shady Side area to stick a cell phone tower. I mean, it really just does not need to go in my kid's playground. It could go easily anywhere else. And, you know, if folks are noticing a discrepancy in the sizes of our classes compared to other schools, then that's something as a community that we need to investigate and get down to the bottom of as to why that is. The answer is not to take money from a corporation to stick a potentially carcinogenic cell phone tower in our kids' playground. And I think that's all that I wanted to say. Thank you very much.